Okay.
All right, welcome from Christ the King Episcopal Church, Point Washington branch, i.e. my house, and Artisan Incorporated, which is actually right up the road from Christ the King Episcopal Church. And we are here with Peter Horn, Christ the King parishioner, Vestry member, school board member at the Treehouse Episcopal Montessori School. And we are going to get to know Peter a little bit better today. Welcome, Peter.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so how long have you been in the Santa Rosa Beach area? What brought you here? How did you find your way to this little corner of paradise?
So my grandfather, my mother's father, bought a lot in Seagrove Beach in 1950. And built a little house as a sort of retirement vacation home about 51 or 52. And my dad was an Episcopal priest, so we didn't have a lot of money to go on fancy vacations. And typically what we would do is we would come and stay at the beach house for a month every summer. And so that was an annual tradition between here and Perdido Bay, where my cousins have a place. And, you know, I just grew to love the place and made a lot of friends. And, you know, Seagrove was only about 50 houses back then. And at that time, 38 stopped at Western Lake and it stopped at Eastern Lake. And so the only way in was to come down 395. And then you could go about a mile to the right or about a mile to the left. And it was when you could hear a car turn off at 98. The pavement was this real nubbly stuff, and you could hear the tires whining. And so we would be at home, you'd hear a car coming, and everybody would run out to the street to see who it was, because it was usually somebody who owned a house there, or it was somebody who was lost and was about to drive down on the beach, and then we could make $5 by digging them out and getting them back up onto the road. So, you know, and
so
yeah.
That's a memory of this area that most people don't know, myself included.
Oh yeah, it was so remote. I mean, we had a TV, but you couldn't get but like one channel, and I think that was a Panama City WJXG TV, I think is what it was. But and then, you know, it was the place that we always came for spring break and whatnot. And I actually spent my honeymoon in another friend's. They had like a guest house behind their beach house, you know, right on the beach in Seagrove. And that's where I spent my honeymoon. And while I was here on my honeymoon, Seaside was just getting started. They had about 5-6 houses under construction, and they offered me a job. And I had worked as a carpenter's helper for summer work for several years, and so I thought, this is crazy. And so I convinced my wife Susan to quit a good job in publishing and move down here. And I went to work for the Seaside Construction Company. And this was in 1984, right after we'd gotten married. And she was the first full-time manager at Perspicacity, which is the little open air market in Seaside. And that lasted about 2 or 3 years. And then Seaside didn't sell any property for about 9 months. And they laid everybody off but the kid that picked up the trash and the 2 real estate salespeople. And then they hired us all back as independent contractors. So that was 70 houses in Seaside I go. So we've just been banging away.
And so when you started doing that independent contractor work, was that as a builder?
Yeah, I worked as a framing contractor for about 2 or 3 houses. And while that was going on, I was able to pull together all the stuff that I needed to stand for the general contracting examination. And because I had worked construction in high school, I was able to get endorsements from all the builders that I worked for. Plus, you have to have either 4 years of experience or a college degree. So my degree in English Lit stood in for for that too. So I became a general contractor in 1986. And my first house was a house in Seaside.
Emily, my wife, Emily, and I had our honeymoon down here as well. So we join you on that. She grew up coming down here in the summers. You know, she's younger than you are, but in the 80s is when she started coming and enjoying that. So anyhow, tell me this: how did you get connected with Christ the King?
You want to try again, Richard? You're frozen. Oh, there you go. You froze up after saying that she grew up.
Okay. So yeah, she grew up coming down here for vacation, spring break, just like you did. She's just maybe 20 years behind you, but same thing. We came down here for our honeymoon, and so now we've found our ways here as well. So
yeah, I know her family. My mother grew up in Dothan, and my grandmother was the clerk of courts in Houston County forever, and my grandfather was a realtor. After World War II.
So how or when did you get connected to Christ the King?
So being a cradle Episcopalian, I was going to one of St. Thomas, I think, in Panama City Beach, but I didn't really gel that well with those people. And then I heard that Sandy Green, who was at St. Andrews by the Sea, was allowing a group to worship at the Fishers of Men retreat over, I can't even remember where it is now, just somewhere over on the bay, like it's either Hewitt Bayou or one of those places. And so I went to a handful of services there, and I mean, there were like 10 of us or 15 of us that were there. And then, my church attendance in those days was not as stellar as it is now, because I was a recovering PK and still stinging from being an acolyte every Sunday of my life those previous 20 years. And then they put in, Holy Mother of Double Wides, and I started going to church there occasionally. And I used to always remark to people that I was the youngest person there by at least 40 years. Because I was 25 and everybody else was my current age, or older. And then, when we built the church, I was kind of spotty at that point. And then I was the general contractor actually for the Sunday school building. And I worked with John Gahagan on that building. And then, just have come and gone. And I knew Carl I knew Carl from Alabama. We had done a lot of work together in youth ministry and camp, McDowell, and also other youth ministry things around the diocese. And so when he was here, I was much more regular attendant than
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you mentioned being a preacher's kid. What was that like growing up in the household with an Episcopal priest for a father?
It's the only thing I know, so I don't really have anything to compare it to, except that I had a large extended family all the time. And my sister, there was a story that my sister was like playing in the yard in front of the church at Emmanuel Episcopal in Opelika, and a parishioner walked up and said, "Well, who are you, little girl?" And she said, "Well, I'm the princess of this church." So we had this kind of sense of entitlement, I think, because we lived on the church grounds in the rectory, two of the churches that I grew up in. And so the church and the parish hall and all the grounds around them were, they were our yard. Yeah, at some point, somebody gave my brother a goat for a pet, and it was tied up out beside the church between the church and the parish house for about a month until my dad made him give it back.
That's a great economic way to keep the grounds. Just have a
Yeah,
group.
that's right.
Yeah. Uh, well, so now you are no longer. Well, you're all grown up and you have kids of your own. So tell us about your children.
So I have two sons. Tennyson is 28, and he's an engineer. He lives in Chicago with his wife Danae, and they're doing the experience the big city thing, and really loving living in Chicago. And I miss him. I don't get to see him as much. He's real close. We're all real close, and we've always done a lot together. And so, we're pining and texting and Zooming and all that stuff. And then my older son, Peter the third, is 31. He's a partner in our construction company, and he's married to a lay architect who works for a local architecture firm, designing houses and buildings and things like that. So, we haven't really strayed that far from the building industry.
Right.
Hopefully, I'll have them all under one roof at some point, and one-stop shop.
Well, so tell me some of the work. There was one in particular that comes to my mind that was in the news, that made a lot of local news, a project that y'all were a part of. You want to share about that or any other?
Are you talking about the post office? Yeah. So we moved the post office from its old location, which was supposed to be sort of the geographic center of Seaside, back to between the Modica Market and the record store and bookstore. And it was actually in the plan to do that pretty early on. And then where the old post office was, there's going to be like a 125-foot tall tower that'll be like a lighthouse type structure at some point whenever Seaside gets around to coming off the dime on that. And we had the building. These guys have moved about 10 houses for me. In fact, I met them when they were moving houses for my grandfather in Dothan 30 years ago. But they got kind of in a hurry because Seaside had a parade planned and a marching band and all this news coverage. And these guys got in a hurry and they started jacking the house up and didn't follow their procedures, and it fell off the jacks and dropped about.
Oh gosh.
But and it made in 30 minutes it was on the Today Show, and after a week it had gotten 30 million views on social media, and fortunately they had some way of figuring out whether they were positive, negative, or neutral, and they were mostly positive or neutral, and Seaside actually figured out that it was worth about $1 million in free advertising. So
wow.
to win, and there was really no damage to the building. I mean, I actually worked on the original building, and then we added onto it about 15 years ago and doubled the size, made it again as deep as it was originally. So it used to only be like 10 feet deep, and then we made it 20 feet deep. And so it's pretty well built, and I can attest to that. And, and now we're actually renovating the little motor courts, which is the little motel building that's in Seaside. And we're going to turn that into kind of an exclusive hotel venue. So.
Okay. And didn't y'all do the public bathrooms there in Seaside?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we built we built 8 public bathrooms, or 7, behind the post office. And so we're local heroes because there's plenty of bathrooms.
I tell you, I love having those when we're there with the kids, man. It's and nice to not have to wait in line, to use the bathroom. Well, so now you're on the vestry at Christ the King. You hid for a while there, and then I finally, found you and convinced you to serve on the vestry. And your role on the vestry, among many, is to serve as the liaison to the Treehouse Episcopal Montessori School. So tell us about your time on the vestry, your role with the school board, anything that you want to share about that work.
Well, I mean, I'm just a guy who can't say no, I guess. I've enjoyed being on the vestry. I've enjoyed it's expanded my appreciation for the congregation and the church, and it's not an unpleasant experience. I mean, I've actually been on a vestry before, and it got a little contentious at times, but I don't find that to be the case here. And I think everybody works pretty hard to keep it from being that too. And I appreciate your leadership in that capacity. I think you do a lot of things that are proactive that help maintain that sense of kinship and friendship and unity. I really appreciate all that. And I enjoy. I mean, Summer is my first cousin removed by divorce. So we've known each other. She was actually in the 4th grade with my ex-wife Susan in Montgomery, and then I've known Summer since we were teenagers and worked together in youth ministry and at Camp McDowell. And then she married my first cousin, who was about one of my closest cousins. And so, we've been close family for 50 years. It's hard to believe. And
Summer being Summer Stow, our director of our Treehouse School, for those who don't know, or when he says Summer, that's Summer Stow, who's also a parishioner at the church. But
yeah, and like her dad and my dad were roommates at Sewanee their freshman year, and her uncle married me and Susan at Ascension in Montgomery in 1984. He was Bill Stout was the Bishop of Alabama at the time. So, and then the church burned down the next day. So,
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh my God! I've heard about that fire at Ascension, but I didn't know that it was the day after your marriage.
Yeah, Bishop Stout said it was too many clergy in one place at one time.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. And so the school, you're on the school board at an exciting time for the school, right? I mean,
it really is. Not only is it an exciting time for the school and the new building, but I mean, just dealing with the outfall of the virus and all the social distancing and everything. It's been pretty stressful. I mean, and I'm not a parent. Most of the school board are parents, and I'm not a parent of a student at the school. But it's a very interesting time. But I'm excited and I'm optimistic that things are going to work themselves out somehow, and this will just be a distant memory at some point in our lives.
Right. It was definitely, I would say, to be on the school board right now is a big job because of that. Every week it seems like there's a potential pivot, or you got to be pretty nimble and flexible because new things happen, new information comes, and big decisions. But
and honestly, I try to kind of take a back seat to the parents of students at the school and the administrators, because I think they're the ones that have to really have that gut check about this.
Well, good. Well, and also, Peter, you're one of our devoted leaders of the daily office at Christ the King on Monday evenings or afternoon at 4:30. Monday's your day to lead evening prayer.
Yeah, that's a blast. I've really enjoyed that a lot. It's made me think about the liturgy a lot more than I think I did before, because I'm not just following along with somebody. I'm actually having to lead and read the words for what they actually say, and so it's been really good for me in that respect.
Yeah, well, it's been great to have you on there. Well, your phone is blowing up, mine's blowing up, so that's a good sign to tell us that it's time to sign off. But thank you, Peter, for your time and for sharing your story with us here at Christ the King.
Well, thank you, Richard.
All right. God bless you. See ya. Bye.